this is Ma'am Buen again. This time we're going to discuss cash basis and accrual basis of accounting. Isa itong topic sa accounting na medyo nakakalito kasi parang iba siya doon sa napag-aralan natin dati. So first, what is this cash basis and accrual basis? We have two methods used in recording our business transaction or in journalizing our business transaction. And that is cash basis or accrual basis. Okay, so what is cash basis? Cash basis, under cash basis, we recognize our revenue on the period where we receive the cash from our customer, regardless of whether we earned it already or not. While under accrual basis, we recognize our revenue on the period where we earned our revenue regardless of whether we receive the payment or not. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Sa cash basis, gumagawa tayo ng entry, credit, revenue, or credit sales. Ang ibig sabihin, nire-recognize natin yung sales and revenue kapag tinanggap natin yung bayad mula sa customer natin. Hindi importante kung kinita na ba talaga natin yung revenue na yon, yung tinanggap nating pera. Under accrual naman, gumagawa tayo ng entry, credit revenue or credit sales sa period or on the date kung saan kinita natin yung perang yon, ay yung revenue na yon. Hindi importante kung tinanggap na kung nagbayad na ba sa atin yung ating customer o hindi. Okay, halimbawa, meron tayong room for rent. Let us make it 1,000 a month para mas madali nating i-compute. So, again, meron tayong room for rent, 1,000 per month. Yung umuupa sa atin, binayaran tayo in advance ng 6 months. So, that is 6,000. Binayad niya ito sa atin ng November 1 of year 1. So, ibig sabihin, mangungupahan siya sa atin, yung binayad niya sa atin na 6,000 ay hanggang April of year 2. Tinanggap natin ang pera ng year 1, November. We're going to record the whole of 6,000 as income or rent income of year 1. Samantalang, that is under cash basis. Samantalang sa accrual, we're going to recognize, ang i-recognize lang natin na revenue for year 1 is only 2 months kasi 2 buwan lang naman ginamit nung lessee yung pinauupahan natin. And yung 4,000 advance, it will not be recorded as revenue. That is, again, under cash basis, we're going to record our revenue on the period kung kailan natin tinanggap yung pera mula sa ating customer. Hindi importante kung kinita na ba natin o hindi yung pera nyon. Samantalang under accrual naman, i-record natin yung ating revenue on the period kung kailan natin kinita yung revenue. So, ang tanong is, kailan ba natin kikita? When can we say that we earned already our revenue? That is, we earned it on the period where we deliver the merchandise or services. So, kung kailan natin na ibigay sa ating kliyente yung services or merchandise, it is on that period wherein we're going to record our revenue. Okay. Expenses naman. Under expenses, or for expenses, we're going to record our expenses when, for cash basis, we're going to record our expenses on the period when we pays our expense, regardless of whether it is used or incurred. While under accrual, we're going to recognize our expenses on the period where we incurred it or used it regardless of whether it is paid or not. Okay, so anong ibig sabihin nito? Sa cash basis, gagawa tayo ng entry, debit expenses, kung kailan tayo nagbayad nung ating gastos. Hindi importante kung nagamit na ba natin o nangyari na nga ba talaga yung gastos. Basta't nagbayad, then we're going to prepare an entry, debit expenses and credit cash. Sa accrual naman, Kung kailan nangyari yung gastos, doon natin i-record yung expenses. Hindi importante kung nagamit na o nangyari na yung gastos. Halimbawa, yung gastos natin sa kuryente. For the month of December of year 1, usually, tatanggapin natin yung bill sa electric company ng January of year 2. Ginamit natin yung kuryente ng December, pero babayaran natin ito sa January of year 2. So, kung kailan tayo nagbayad, ibig sabihin sa January of year 2, doon tayo gagawa ng entry, debit expenses, and credit cash. Samantalang sa accrual naman, kung kailan nangyari, kailan natin ginamit yung kuryente, doon natin i-report yung ating expenses. So, ang ibig sabihin sa accrual, ginamit natin yung kuryente ng December, dapat i-report natin ito as expense ng December, bayad man ito o hindi. Okay. So, again, gumagawa tayo ng entry. Under cash basis, gumagawa tayo ng entry kapag merong perang involved, kapag merong perang pumasok at merong perang lumabas. Usually, para mas mapadali yung recording ng mga transactions, usually, ang mas ginagamit sa step number 2 in recording our revenues and expenses ay cash basis accounting. Okay, so, pero, is this part of GAAP? Hindi, kasi accrual method is what is included in our generally accepted accounting principle. That is one underlying assumption, accrual. So, ang ibig kong sabihin, sa step number 2, pag gumagawa tayo pag nagre-record tayo ng transaction about expenses and revenues, we usually use GAAP. Samantalang, kapag gagawa tayo ng financial statement, all the data in the financial statement should be based on accrual. So, ibig sabihin, mula sa step number 2, journalization, hanggang sa posting, hanggang sa trial balance, karamihan sa trial balance na mga data is based on cash basis. But, when we prepare our financial statement, it should be based on accrual. That is why, after the trial balance, we have to prepare an adjusting entry to convert our cash basis data to make it accrual basis. So, when we prepare our financial statement, it is already based on accrual. Okay, linawin natin. So, again, since sa step number 2, journal entries, recording the business transaction, again, as I have said, we usually use cash basis in recording our revenues and expenses. So, under cash basis, kailan ba natin i-record ang gastos? Kapag binayaran natin ito. Hindi importante kung nangyari na nga ba o nagastos na yung bagay na ito. Samantalang sa revenue naman, kapag tinanggap natin yung pera, i-record natin ito as revenue or sales. So, ang ibig sabihin, kapag nagbebenta tayo, nagpautang tayo, wala tayong ginagawang entry. Kapag nangutang din tayo, wala rin tayong ginagawang entry. Kapag nagbayad tayo ng utang sa ating mga supplier, that's the time that we prepare an entry, debit purchases and credit cash. At kapag yung mga may utang naman sa atin ang nagbayad, that's the time that we're going to prepare an entry, debit cash and credit sales. Regardless of kailan ba talaga nangyari yung benta. Okay. In case of expenses, hindi importante kung nagamit na nga ba ito o nangyari na nga ba talaga yung gastos. Okay. Let us put it this way. Halimbawa, meron tayong isang convenience store. So, kasi usually yung mga cash basis na recording ng expenses and revenues, kalimitan nangyayari ito sa mga SME, yung mga hindi naman malalaking company talaga. Okay, so let's go back to my example. Halimbawa, meron tayong convenience store. Meron tayong credit line sa ating mga supplier, that is 30 days. Ang ibig sabihin, pwede tayo mangutang sa kanila after 30 days, saka na lang natin babayaran. At yung meron din naman tayong mga reseller. Merong isang barangay, malapit na barangay sa atin, na yung mga may-ari ng sari-sari store sa atin kumukuha. At binibigyan din natin sila ng credit line, 15 days na credit line. Okay, so again, sa supplier, nangungutang tayo 30 days. Tapos dun sa mga customer naman natin, meron din tayong binibigay sa kanila na credit line 15 days. After 15 days, saka na lang nila kukunin, saka na lang nila babayaran yung utang nila sa atin. Okay. Say December of year 1. Yung supplier natin, say Nescafe, nag-deliver sa atin ng December 15. Worth 10,000 ng kanilang mga products. Since utang, dineliver lang sa atin, hindi tayo gumawa ng entry. Okay? Pagdating ng January 15, that is after 1 month, pagdating ng January 15, nagbayad na tayo sa Nescafe. That's the time na gumawa tayo ng entry, debit purchases, and credit cash. Kaya lang, ang sabi nga natin, ano ba ang tama? It is accrual. Yung purchases natin na ginawang entry ng January of year 2, it is not purchases of year 2. It is purchases of year 1, December of year 1. So, ibig sabihin, yung purchases ng year 1 is understated. Kaya, dapat gumawa tayo ng adjusting entry. Doon naman sa mga resellers natin, retailers natin, merong isang customer kumuha sa atin ng paninda ng December 20 of year 1 worth 5,000. Meron tayong 15 days na credit line sa kanila. Nung kinuha niya yung paninda worth 5,000 dahil utang, hindi tayo gumawa ng entry. Pagdating ng January, nagbayad siya, January 5 nagbayad. Tumanggap tayo ng pera para mas madali kasi yun ang nangyayari to facilitate the recording of the transaction. So, tinanggap natin yung 5,000, gumawa ng entry, debit cash, and credit sales. Again, the recording of sales in January is wrong because that is not sales of January. That is not sales of year 2. It is sales of year 1, December year 1. So, it means the sales of year 1 is understated. Okay. So, how are we going to compute or to determine how much is our correct sales when we prepare our financial statement? Okay. So, for our sales, this is cash basis and this is accrual. Okay. For credit sales, that is, wala ito sa cash, pero meron sa accrual. Kasama yan. Para sa cash sales, parehong meron. Kasi, gagawa ng entry sa cash basis, tinanggap ang pera, debit cash, and credit sales. And it is also part of accrual kasi gumawa ng entry, debit cash, and credit sales nung ibenta to. Ibig sabihin na i-deliver natin yung merchandise doon sa customer. Ibig sabihin, it is already revenue. And we have collections from customer. Under cash basis, kasama siya. Pero sa accrual, hindi siya kasama. Kasi sa cash basis, pag tinanggap yung bayad mula sa customer, gagawa ng entry, debit cash, and credit sales. Okay. So, eto yung total sales under our cash basis At ito naman ang accrual. Ang ibig kong sabihin, sa trial balance natin, since it is based on cash basis, this amount na nasa trial balance is composed of cash sales and collection from customer. Samantalang ang i-report natin sa ating comprehensive income or income statement na total sales ay dapat cash sales at saka credit sales. Okay? So, okay na ang cash sales kasi pareho siyang kasama. So, eto ang nawawala, credit sales. So, how are we going to compute our credit sales? If this credit sales, we're going to have our accounts receivable, ledger, or T account. Take note, do not be misled na bakit AR? Ang sabi ko kanina, wala naman tayong AR. We do not record AR pag nagpapautang. We're going to use this T account AR for determining how much is our credit sales. Kasi, kahit hindi naman tayo gumagawa ng entry, na pag nagpapautang, just the same, alam natin at the beginning of the year, sino-sino yung mga may utang sa atin. At sino-sino yung mga at the end of the year, sino-sino yung mga may utang. Siyempre, hindi natin pwedeng kalimutan yon kahit hindi tayo gumagawa ng entry kapag nagpapautang tayo. So, here, we have our beginning balance. And then, we have our collection. Siyempre, alam natin kung sino yung mga nagbayad sa atin. So, we have our collections. We have our SRDA, Sales Return, Discount, and Allowances. Kung sino-sino yung mga binigyan natin ng discount at saka ng allowances. Yung mga customers natin na nagbayad within the discount period, binigay natin. So, alam natin dapat yan. May record tayo dyan. And then, sino yung mga hindi nagbayad, tumakbo, write off. And of course, meron din tayong mga recoveries. Okay, yung mga akala natin ay tinakbuhan tayo pero bumalik para bayaran tayo. At nandito yung ating ending balance. So, sino ba yung mga may utang sa atin at the end of the year? Okay? So, nasaan yung credit sales? Nandito. Nandito ang credit sales. Okay. So, para ma-compute natin tong credit sales dito, if we have this information, so, we have our ending balance. Again, as I have said, lagi namang binibigay yan kasi nga sabi ko nga, kahit hindi tayo gumawa ng entry, syempre alam natin kung sino yung mga may utang sa atin. At collection, sino ang mga nagbayad, SRDA, write-off, at saka recovery. So, all those data given, we can compute our credit sales. Okay. Next is purchases. Para sa purchases, so, for purchases, we have cash and accrual. Okay. So, for purchases, again, we have cash purchases. So, cash purchases, pareho yung naka-record, both in cash basis and accrual basis. Then, we have credit purchases. Sa cash basis, hindi siya kasama. Hindi siya naka-record. Kasi nga, sabi ko, kapag gumagawa lang naman tayo ng entry, kapag may cash transaction. Sa credit purchases, hindi. Pero sa accrual, dapat kasama siya. Kasi kung kailan natin tinanggap yung purchases, yung merchandise or services, ibig sabihin, it should be recorded on that period. And we have payment to supplier. Payment to supplier, sa cash basis kasama siya kasi pag nagbayad tayo, we're going to prepare an entry. Samantalang sa accrual, hindi siya kasama. So, ito yung total purchases under cash basis, which is composed of your cash purchases at saka yung payment to supplier. Samantalang, ang accrual naman is composed of cash purchases at saka credit purchases. Okay. Ang nasa trial balance natin na purchases, is this one, which is cash purchases at saka payment to supplier. Samantalang when we prepare our financial statement, income statement in particular, ang dapat na i-report natin as purchases is cash purchases at saka credit purchases. So again, how are we going to compute our credit purchases? Again, let us have the T account of accounts payable. Okay, or ledger of accounts payable. So, parang katulad din kanina ng accounts receivable, wala talaga tayong ledger sa libro, wala tayong accounts payable or accounts receivable kasi nga hindi tayo nagre-record nun. Pero just the same, syempre, at the beginning of the year, alam natin sino-sino yung mga pinagkakautangan natin na mga supplier. So, we have our beginning balance here. At, sino-sino yung mga binayaran natin, payments to supplier. At also, yung nagbigay sa atin ng PRDA, that is Purchase Returns, Discount, and Allowances. And at the end of the year, sino-sino yung ating pinagkakautangan. Ending balance. Okay, so all this data are given. Again, as I have said, yung beginning balance, dapat alam natin yan kung sino yung mga inutangan natin na hindi pa bayad at the beginning of the year. And also at the end of the year, kung sino yung mga binayaran natin at sino ang nagbigay ng purchase returns and allowances. And, nasa ng credit purchases? Nandito. So, with all this data, we can compute how much is our credit purchases. Okay, what about other expenses, operating expenses? Say we have salaries expense. Okay, so we're talking about year 1. So, say salaries expense. Ang salaries expense paid, lagay natin, paid. We're talking about year 1. Ang nakalagay, total salaries expense paid for the year is 100,000. Okay. Meron tayong prepaid salaries, beginning. Meron tayong prepaid salaries, end. Prepaid salaries, end. We have accrued salaries or salaries payable, beginning. And we have accrued salaries payable, end. Okay. So, say we have 10,000, we have 5,000, we have 3,000, and we have 8,000. Okay. So, and how much will be our salaries expense? Ito yung sa accrual. Ito yung ilalagay natin sa ating income statement. Okay. Salaries, first is let us define prepaid expense. What is prepaid expense? An expense already paid but not yet incurred or used. So, nabayaran na natin pero hindi pa nagagamit. Okay. Year 1. Prepaid salaries beginning. Ang kailangan natin ay salaries expense. Ibig sabihin, ito yung nagamit ngayon, nangyari ngayong taon. Year 1. Okay? Let us make it year 2 na lang para ano. So, this is year 2 already. So, again, ang kailangan natin ay salaries expense. So, nangyari ngayong year 2, ngayong taong year 2. So, prepaid salaries beginning. Nangyari ba ito ngayong taon? Prepaid salaries beginning. Nangyari ba ngayong taon? Yes, kasi binayaran siya last year, pero ngayon gagamitin. Prepaid salaries end. Nangyari ba yan ngayong taon? Hindi. So, tanggalin natin. Then, we have accrued salaries end of 3,000. accrued salaries payable or accrued salaries end. Nangyari ba yan ngayong taon? Okay. So, kasama yan kasi first, what is accrued expense? So, let us define it first. Accrued expense is an expense already incurred or used but not yet paid. Okay? So, accrued salaries end. Ito pala muna. Accrued salaries beginning, 3,000. So, nangyari ba yan ngayong taon? Hindi. Last year yan nangyari. Utang yan last year. Binayaran ngayon. Okay, so minus. And this one, accrued salaries end. Nangyari ba yan ngayon? Yes. So, how much is our salaries? Expense, that is 100,000 plus 10,000 minus 5,000 minus 3,000 plus 8,000. So, that is 110,000. Our adjusted or correct salaries expense for year 2 is 110. Okay, baliktarin natin. What if ang kailangan ay salaries expense? So, ang nakareport, kapag ang data ay galing sa financial statement, it means that is accrual. So, 110,000. So, we have prepaid salaries beginning. We have end. We have salaries payable. Accrued salaries expense and salaries payable is the same. Beginning, we have end. Okay, so let us have 10,000. We have 5,000, 3,000, and 8,000. Okay, so salaries paid. Ang kailangan natin dito ay yung binayaran. Okay? So, we have 10,000. We are still at year 2. Prepaid salaries beginning. Binayaran ba yan ngayong taon? Hindi. Last year yan binayaran. Kaya minus. Prepaid salaries end. Binayaran ba yan ngayong taon? Yes. So, add. Then we have salaries payable beginning. Binayaran ba yan ngayon? Yes. Sorry. So, it is plus. And then, we have prepaid salaries payable end. Binayaran ba yan? Hindi. Okay. I-add natin. So, that is 110 minus 10,000 plus 8,000 minus 8,000. So, that is 100,000. Okay. So, salaries paid, 100,000. Ayun, 100,000. Salaries paid. Okay. So, for other income, halimbawa, interest income. Okay. Interest income received. So, ito yung nasa trial balance. 20,000. Meron tayong unearned interest income beginning. Meron tayong unearned interest income end. At meron tayong accrued interest income beginning and accrued interest income end. So, we have 2,000, 3,000, 1,000, and 4,000. Okay. So, magkano ang interest income to be reported in our income statement? Ito yung accrual. Okay, first let us define unearned interest. If we said unearned interest, it is an income already received but not yet earned. Okay, tinanggap na natin yung bayad pero hindi pa natin kinikita. So, ang kailangan natin ay interest income, accrual. Kinita na, hindi importante kung tinanggap natin ang bayad o hindi. Again, ang kailangan natin, interest income, accrual. Kinita na natin, ibig sabihin na i-deliver na natin yung services or merchandise. Hindi importante kung tinanggap na ba natin yung bayad. Okay, unearned interest income beginning. Kinita ba yan natin ngayong taon, year 2? Yes. So that is plus. Unearned interest income ending. End. So tinanggap na natin ang bayad niyan kasi unearned, ending. So hindi pa natin yan kinikita, minus. And then we have accrued income. What is accrued income? An income already earned but not yet received. So kinita na natin pero hindi pa natin tinatanggap ang bayad. Okay, accrued interest income. Kinita ba yan natin ngayong taon? Hindi. So, that is minus. Accrued interest income end. Kinita ba natin yan ngayong taon? Yes. So, that is plus. Again, accrued interest income beginning. Last year pa yan. Ngayon lang tinanggap yung bayad. So, again, hindi yan kinita ngayong taon. It is income of last year. So, tanggalin. Kasi hindi yan ngayon. Accrued interest income end? Yes. So, kinita natin ngayong taon. So, that is plus. Okay. So, how much is our interest income? 20,000 plus 2,000 minus 3,000 minus 1,000 plus 4,000. So, that is 22,000. In our trial balance, ang mga data na nandoon ay mga cost basis data. Kasi nga, para mas madali para sa atin ang gumawa ng entry para sa revenues and expenses, cash basis ang ginagamit natin. Pero, when we prepare our financial statement, we have to use accrual method because that is what is part of our GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principle. Okay, let us have a problem to illustrate it. Okay. Mayana Company began operations on January 1, year 1. During the year ended December 31, year 2, the accounting records had been maintained on a double entry basis, but the cost basis of accounting has been employed. The trial balance prepared from these records on December 31, year 2 appeared as follows. Okay, so, nangyari, year 1, nag-umpisa ang negosyo ng Mayana. And year 1, tapos na, the current year is already year 2. So, here is the trial balance. We have cash sales, we have purchases, expenses, equipment, share capital, land, building, mortgage, payable, and retained earnings. Take note, wala tayong accounts receivable at accounts payable dito. Kasi nga, cash basis ang ginagamit. The entity decided to convert the accounting records to accrual basis on December 31, year 2. Okay, here is the additional information of our problem. So, we have the requirement first. So, the requirement, prepare adjusting entries on December 31, year 2. Another one is prepare an income statement for the year ended December 31, year 2. And prepare statement of financial position on December 31, year 2. Again, we have to prepare adjusting entries, then income statement, at saka statement of financial position. Okay, so we have our additional information. Accounts receivable, December 31, year 1 is 200,000, December 31, year 2 is 250,000. Okay, for 200,000, that is beginning balance, take note, nung nagbayad yung customer sa atin ngayong taon year 2 ng 200,000, anong entry ang ginawa natin? It is debit cash and credit sales. But again, the sales of this year is overstated because it is not sales of year 2, it is sales of year 1. So what is our adjusting entry? Babawasan natin yung ating sales. So debit sales of 200,000 and credit retained earnings of 200,000. Tandang mabuti, kapag ang i-adjust mo ay income nung nakaraang taon, it is already retained earnings. In case of a corporation, in case of a sole proprietorship, it will be a capital account. In case of partnership, it will be the capital account of the partners. Okay, kasi sarado na ang net income ng nakaraang taon. Sinara na ito sa retained earnings, kaya retained earnings na ang gagamitin natin. Okay, ulit. So, our adjusting entry, debit sales, kasi overstated ang sales natin ngayong taon. And credit retained earnings, dahil sa sales ito dapat nung year 1. The sales of year 1 is understated. Okay, what about the ending balance of AR? So, that is 250,000. Okay, ito yung pautang natin. Hindi natin ni-record kasi nga pautang. At kailangan lang nating i-record. So, we have to prepare our entry, debit accounts receivable, and credit sales. That is 250,000. Okay. The sales of year 1 included 40,000 deposited by a customer for merchandise to be delivered in year 2. Kailan ba dapat i-record ito as sales? Kung kailan natin dineliver yung merchandise. So, dineliver siya ng year 2, it should be reported as sales of year 2. But since hindi natin tinanggap ang pera ng year 2, wala tayong ginawang entry sa year 2, ibig sabihin ang sales natin ng year 2 is understated at ang sales naman ng year 1 is overstated dahil nirecord natin ito as sales ng year 1. So, our entry, debit, retained earnings dahil overstated ang sales ng year 1, and credit sales of 40,000 kasi understated ang sales ng year 2. Okay. Then we have next, accounts payable. For accounts payable, December 31, year 1, beginning balance. So, ibig sabihin, binayaran natin ito ngayong taon, year 2. Nung nagbayad tayo, gumawa tayo ng entry, debit purchases, and credit cash. Pero, take note, hindi siya purchases ng year 2. Purchases yan ng year 1. So, ibig sabihin, ang purchases ng year 2 ay overstated. So, entry, debit, debit retained earnings and credit purchases dahil overstated ang purchases. At ang net income nung nakaraang taon is overstated, kaya babawasan natin. So, debit retained earnings ng 350,000 and credit purchases 350,000. Okay. At ang accounts payable ending is 280,000. So, since hindi tayo gumawa ng entry dahil nangutang lang tayo, so, we just have to record our accounts payable, our liability, and our purchases. So, entry, debit purchases of 280,000 and credit accounts payable 280,000. Okay. Then, we have accrued expenses. So, already incurred but not yet paid. Accrued expenses is a liability. So, December 31, year 1, 70,000. Ito yung liability natin. Binayaran natin ngayong taon. So, ang ginawang entry nung magbayad, debit expenses and credit cash. Ibig sabihin, ang expenses ng year 2 is overstated. At ang income ng year 1 is overstated. Kasi ang expense ng year 1 is understated. So, overstated ang income. Okay, so retained earnings is sobra, kaya ang entry natin, debit retained earnings of 70,000 and credit expenses kasi overstated ang expense natin ngayon. Okay, and we have our accrued expense ending of 100,000. So, let us just going to record our accrued expense kasi hindi pa ito nababayaran pero kailangan nating i-report as expense ng year 2. So, entry, debit expenses of 100,000 and credit accounts payable. So, debit expenses and credit accounts payable of 100,000. Okay, 5. Merchandise inventory beginning is 150,000. Again, ang merchandise inventory is understated. take note, the merchandise inventory beginning at the end of the year is already an expense. Hindi na yan asset. Ang asset ay itong ending. Ulitin ko, ang merchandise inventory beginning, pagdating ng December 31, it is no longer an asset, it is already an expense. So parang ang mangyayari ngayon ay magre-record tayo ng expense. So, debit, merchandise inventory beginning of 150,000 and credit retained earnings of 150,000. Okay. Kasi para nangyari, we're going to record our expenses. So, that is debit merchandise inventory and credit retained earnings. At para sa ending merchandise inventory, to record our ending inventory, it is just debit merchandise inventory of 210 and credit income summary of 210. Income summary siya kasi current year pa siya. Then we have this one, the purchases include 100,000 cash advance to supplier for merchandise to be delivered in year 2. Okay. So, nagbigay tayo ng advance ngayon sa supplier, nagbayad ng pera, kaya naman gumawa ng entry, debit purchases, and credit cash. Kaya lang, kailan ba natin matatanggap yung merchandise na yon? Next year pa. Kaya, ang purchases natin ay overstated. Okay, so ang entry natin, debit, advances to supplier, and credit purchases. We have to recognize our asset. So, debit advances, yun ang ating asset dapat, and credit purchases kasi overstated yung ating purchases. Okay. The equipment was acquired on July 1, year 1. The estimated life ay 10 years. Magkano ba ang equipment natin? Ang equipment ay 200,000. Take note dito sa ating trial balance. Walang naka-record na accumulated depreciation. Ibig sabihin, last year, nung year 1, hindi nag-record ng depreciation expense. Okay. So, ngayong taon, i-record natin yung depreciation expense. So, entry, that is 10%, 200,000 to. So, ibig sabihin, equipment is 200,000. So, 10%, that is 20,000 per annum. So, ang sabi, the equipment was acquired July 1. So, kalahating taon nung last year, ang depreciation na hindi na i-record. So, ang entry, debit, depreciation expense, yung current year, 20,000, another debit, retained earnings, 10,000, ito yung depreciation ng nakaraang taon, and credit accumulated depreciation equipment of 30,000. Then, the land and building were acquired on January 1, year 1. The life of the building ay 5 years. Again, ang building ay 1,500,000. At ang sabi 5 taon. So, ibig sabihin, 300,000 per year, 1,500,000 divided by 5, so that is 300,000 per year. So, ang sabi, the land and building were acquired January 1. So, buo ang depreciation expense last year. Katulad ng equipment, walang accumulated depreciation dito. Ibig sabihin, hindi nag-record ng depreciation expense last year. So, understated ang expense, ibig sabihin, overstated ang income. Overstated ang retained earnings. Okay, so, our entry, debit depreciation expense, yung expense ng year 2, 300,000. Another debit, retained earnings, yung overstatement ng retained earnings because of the understatement of expense, 300,000. And credit accumulated depreciation, 600,000. Okay, next. It is estimated that 10% of outstanding accounts receivable on December 31, year 2 may prove uncollectible. So, we're going to recognize doubtful accounts expense. How much is our AR at the end? That is 250,000. So, 10%, that is 25,000. So, our entry, debit, bad debts expense of 25,000 and credit allowance for the bad debts or doubtful accounts, 25,000. And we have the last one, The mortgage was on the land and building and was obtained on September 1 of year 2. The interest rate is 12% per annum, payable semi-annually, September 1 and March 1. The mortgage will mature after 4 years. Okay, so magkano yung ating mortgage payable? That is, mortgage payable is 900,000, 12% per annum. September, October, November, December, 4 na buwan. So, pag 12%, that is 1% per month. So, 900,000 times 0.04, 4% kasi 4 na buwan. So, that is 36,000. So, we're going to record our accrued interest expense. So, our entry, debit interest expense of 36,000 and credit interest payable of 36,000. Okay, so we're done with requirement 1. We are now going to prepare our income statement. Okay, so for our income statement, so sales, how much is our adjusted sales? So mula dun sa mga adjusting entries natin, okay, so we have our sales. Sales is 4 million. 4 million ang sales natin. Tapos meron tayong adjusting entry. Meron tayong sales. So minus 200,000. Then we have accounts receivable, credit sales. So plus 250,000. And then meron tayong credit sales ulit, plus 40,000. And then meron tayong, okay, so that's all is our adjustment for our income statement. So sales is 4,090,000. So sales 4,090,000. That is our adjusted sales already. So, ito yung accrual na ngayon. Then, we have beginning inventory. Our beginning inventory is, merchandise inventory is 150,000. So, we have 150,000. Then, we have purchases. Ang purchases natin per trial balance is 2 million. 2 million. Then, we have our adjusting entries. We have purchases minus credit purchases, so that is minus 350. And then we have purchases debit of 280, so plus 280. And then we have expenses, eto, purchases minus yung advances minus 100. Okay. So, our adjusted purchases is 1,830,000. So, we have purchases of 1,830,000. We have gas, goods available for sale of 1,980,000 minus merchandise inventory end of 210,000. So, our cost of sales is 1,770,000. So, sales minus your cost of sales, that is our gross profit is 2,320,000. Then we have our expenses. So, the adjusted expenses from our expenses of 1.5 plus minus the adjusting entries that we prepared, our adjusted expenses is 1,530,000. Then we have our depreciation expense of 320,000. We have budget expense of 25,000. So, operating income is 445,000. Our operating expense is 1,875,000. Minus the finance cost of interest expense of 36,000. So, our net income before tax ay 409,000. Okay, so the next requirement is the financial position. Okay, so we have our financial position. So, we have our cash. Hindi naman nabago ang cash natin. Wala naman tayong adjustment para sa cash. So, that is 1.5. Then, we have accounts receivable, the ending balance of 250,000 less allowance for doubtful accounts of 25,000. So, net realizable value is 225,000. We have advances to supplier, 100,000 plus merchandise inventory end of 210,000. Our total current asset is 2,035,000. Then we have our land of 800,000. Then we have our building of 1.5 minus accumulated depreciation, building of 600,000, 300 yun. And then, the book value is 900,000. Equipment is 200,000 minus the accumulated depreciation of 30. So, 170 is our book value. Total non-current is 1,870. Total assets is 3,905,000. Our liabilities and equity. Accounts payable is 380,000. That is after the adjustment. We have two adjustment ng accounts payable. That is, let us check. Okay. So, we have accounts payable of 100,000. Expenses, and then this one, 280,000 accounts payable for purchases. So, we have 280 plus 100,000. So, that is 390,000 and 380,000. Okay, this one. Then, we have interest payable of 36,000. We have mortgage payable of 900,000. Total liabilities is 1,316,000. For, we have our equity, share capital, hindi naman siya nabago. It is still 2 million. Then, we have retained earnings. This one, 180,000. An adjusted balance is 600,000. And we have plus minus of the adjusting entries that we prepared. The net, the adjusted balance, beginning balance of RE is 180,000. And plus the net income of 409,000, this one. The net income of 409,000. So, ending RE is 589,000. So, 2 million plus 589,000, we have our total equity of 2,589,000. Then, we plus the total liabilities of 1,316,000. So, total liabilities and equity is 3,905,000 also, balance. Okay. So, again, this data are all based on accrual method already because we prepare the adjusting entry to convert the data, this one, to convert this data which is cost basis. We prepare adjusting entries to convert it into accrual. So when we prepare our financial statement, this one and the income statement, it is already based on generally accepted accounting principle, one of the underlying assumption, accrual method. Okay. For part 2 of this video, it will be more problems, more illustrative problems.